Dr. Jackson?
When we talk about the savagery, it's the tenacity and that's the emotion we want to attribute to the mascots or those that are using them. When you bring up Chief Osceola, for those folks don't really know the history. Half black, never rode a horse. They were running. They were hiding in the Everglades. They didn't want to be relocated. And the irony is that when he made peace or attempted to make peace with the United States government, the Army, they captured him under white truce, captured him, and then beheaded him. And the commanding officer kept the head to give to his child. Now, I'm trying to get, who's the savage? I just have a hard time understanding how we portray the historical facts. And then we distort it a little bit to try to make it, once again, a promotional and exciting thing with the flame and the spear and, pomp and circumstance, fireworks. But what do we constantly pass on to the next generation? I'm glad to see that there's some young folks here today that'll have the opportunity to hear the descriptions. But it's certainly not what we see in Disney all the time and or read. The images are wonderful and flowery. But America's not that way all the time. Are we?
Back here.
Like Dr. Jackson, beginning in 1992, which was the last great season of the Washington football team, and also the 500th anniversary of Columbus's beginning of the plunder, Native American groups began picketing every single game at RFK Stadium. I attended every one of those home games and witnessed, as Dr. Jackson said, the abuse that was heaped upon the Native demonstrators. I was a reporter. And at that same time, Susan Schoen Harjo and others launched a lawsuit before the Patent and Trademark Board, which was eventually successful in outlawing the racist name, which was eventually overturned. So I'm familiar with this history and have written about it often and totally embraced the rejection of the racist name. We wouldn't call them the Coons. We wouldn't call them the Jigaboos. And so why should we call them the Redskins? But
or niggas. Or niggas. Or niggas.
But Dr. Begay, I'd like to ask this question, which when Dr. Jackson pointed out the history of Osceola as half African, just in 2012, there was a massive disenfranchisement. When I mention this point to my colleagues and friends, they say, well, why are you expecting black people to support this native cause when in 2012 there was a massive disenfranchisement, a vote by, I think it was the Sioux Nation, to disenfranchise the black Indians and say, you're no longer Indians.
Cherokee.
The Cherokee, thank you. So how do you justify recruiting the support of African Americans like myself, or how do I defend support for this cause when African Americans say, well, they disenfranchised us lock, stock, and barrel after decades of being the thought of thinking themselves as Indians? How do you correct that imbalance?
Wow.
Any Cherokees out there? I want to throw it to you. This is the way I would answer that question. It's actually a very good question. Native nations, in its entirety, exists on the fundamental principle that we're sovereign entities. We're sovereign. We're sovereign nations. Politically, it's deeply embedded in the Constitution of the United States, which specifically recognizes at least three sovereigns: the federal government, state governments, and Indian nations. And each nation has their right to determine who should be a citizen and who should not. And each nation within its boundaries determines how they should run their affairs. It's it would not be appropriate for me to comment on what is going on in Cherokee Nation in terms of their sovereign status. I have an opinion. It might not necessarily be what Cherokee people would like to hear, but really, what's happening at the Cherokee Nation is up to the Cherokee people, including those that have been disenfranchised. And we live under the rule of law, we live under these circumstances, and that's something that will need to be addressed through the institutions that have been set up at the Cherokee Nation. It has not been resolved yet. It has not been resolved yet. So we're going to see how this gets played out. So it's very, very interesting. The other question that sort of was embedded in the larger statement is around why should we support one another. It's really quite interesting. We're in this together.
That's right.
We're a human family.
That's right.
We are who we are, five-finger people, and the United States is based on a set of laws and rules and regulations, in particular democracy, justice, and so forth. I was one of the 7 litigants with Suzanne Schoen-Harjo against the Pro Football Inc., and we went through 17 years of this fight. We did not lose on a technicality. We were paused on a technicality. There's a younger group coming up where latches will not be attached to them, and let's see if the United States is up for justice. Let's see. Let's see what these younger folks will achieve. So I'm looking forward to that day. And it also reminds me that as a young man, I would go into a store. I would walk down the street, in particular in the border towns. Wouldn't you know it? I would be called dirty redskin, stinking red nigger, and it still is with me. You know, those words. It's very, very hurtful. And when hurtful comments are made like that, and you hear and see in sports entertainment those words being celebrated as though it's the next best thing since sliced bread, you question the intent of these people. And sports entertainment, as Dr. Jackson was saying, it's really about money. It's really about money. So if you hit them where it hurts, I think change can occur. And I'm looking forward to that day when the younger folks that are bringing up the case comes before court. I think it'll be a good day.